forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March. For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk, and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger Ten. Here's Steve Deace.
And here is Game Week on Bigger Ten. I am Steve Deace alongside my co-host, Aaron McIntire. Can't you just feel it a little bit? You woke up this morning. I let the dog out. It was like 59 degrees outside. Yeah. I had the window down, driving to the gym, to the office here today, listening to my podcast, getting ready for game week. I mean, it is finally here, Aaron. We made it through another long, grueling off season, and it is now September.
Indeed it is, and I mean, tomorrow night, I saw somewhere we're going to have like 16 or 17 games kicking off within like a half hour or an hour of each other. I mean, I hope my little one is sleeping through a lot of this. That would be really, really nice. Probably won't happen, but I'm going to catch as much as I possibly can this weekend when it is on, because like you said, the long national nightmare, I mean, it feels like last season was just kind of a blip. This year it feels like the full Monty, and that's a good feeling. One
of my favorite weekends of the year. It's fantasy drafts. It's all the college games, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, even into Labor Day. So let's get it started with our Big Five on Bigger Ten. And let's begin. Scott Frost, what you doing? Cameron Taylor-Britt, what you doing? Fielding a punt at the 1 and then throwing it out of the end zone? A 30-yard penalty on the same guy? If we get to the end of this season and Scott Frost is done, we may look at that play in that game, the roughing the passer and the taunting, that took an interception away that would have put Nebraska deep into Illinois territory and maybe put an early door slammer on the Illini, and instead 10 minutes later, the score was 30-9, Illinois. Nebraska beating itself. Even the all Big Ten kicker last year missed not one, but 2 extra points in like perfect conditions. It was a complete and total meltdown. I joked at halftime that there had been 25 points scored in the game, and unfortunately, they'd all been scored by Nebraska. Just 16 of them were credited to Illinois at the time. If I'm a Nebraska fan, I'm just like, is this just comeuppance for 40 years of dominance? I have rarely seen a team create ways to beat itself as it did against Illinois. Now, Illinois played well, too. If you look at and we'll get to Illinois here in a second, but if you look at the yards per play, it's only a 0.6 yard difference for Nebraska. And frankly, a lot of that was with Big Bert playing an NFL style of, I'm up by 2 scores, so I'll let you take 6 minutes to score and run the clock out. That's how they do it in the NFL. That's why so many games in the NFL are decided by 1 score or less. There's so many garbage time touchdowns, right? Okay. But, I mean, they just gave this game away. And at the first sign of adversity, you saw the Huskers assume the position. And Scott Frost said afterward, Aaron, this is like the same movie. Indeed, sir. And you're the director.
So there's a couple of different ways to look at this. One is this is just the opening game of the season. There are going to be mistakes that happen. The other way to look at this is how the head coach of that team decided to look at this, which it's the same movie over and over again. There have been times where teams are in the midst of a drought, a losing streak. And there are different types of losing streaks. There are losing streaks where you lose the same way every single time. Maybe it's special teams that's just letting you down. Gave away a huge punt or a kick return in an inopportune time. Those things can be corrected. If you're losing the same way, at least it's one thing that you can pin down will get better there next season or next game or next month in conference play. Then there's losing different ways each time. That's a bigger warning sign. Because you can't really pin down what's going wrong. It's kind
systemic.
Of a systemic failure each week. What we're seeing with Nebraska, though, it's neither of those two things. I guess maybe if you wanted to call it systemic, you could, but it's a number of, it's turnovers, it's mental mistakes, it's all of these things over and over again. It's not one thing each week, it's all the things every single time they go out there. And here's the thing that would be maddening if I were a Nebraska fan. I wish I knew the stat off the top of my head. I bet you do, Steve. How many one-possession games that they've lost? What is it, 12 or 13 now?
13 of them. It's the second most in the NCAA behind North Carolina, although a lot of North Carolina's one-score losses the last 4 years were before Mac Brown took over, just as an FYI.
That tells you you've got the talent there on the field.
Yeah.
To be able to be in this
They're
league.
The inverse of Iowa.
Exactly.
When their old AD said, we're not Iowa. We got to hire Ames here. Well, they need to be a little bit more like Iowa. They'd win a lot more of these one-score games that you guys always win, brother.
It would be maddening because, we make fun of Nebraska fans sometimes during the offseason for having outsized and really unrealistic expectations about what the season before them holds. Well, guys, 13 one-possession games, one-score games in the last however many years, I would be so frustrated because you are right on the cusp. Let's just say 50%, 40, 30% of those games you turn around. Are we having a different conversation? Probably a little bit different. Would probably be still subpar expectations for Scott Frost, but at least we'd be having a different expectation if they just won 30% of those games spread out. 30 to 50%. So if I'm a Nebraska fan, it's like, what do we do now? Because it is the same movie. It's not one thing every week. It's all the things every single time.
Nebraska 18-33 in its last 51 college football games. Folks, from 1966 through 2001, Nebraska lost 4 or more games in a season only 3 times. And yet they are 18-33 in their last 51 games. Scott Frost is now 12-21. This is the first time Illinois has beaten Nebraska twice in a row since Red Grange, guys, in the 1920s. I mean, the numbers are staggering. Boosters had to come in and buy up Nebraska's remaining games for the home opener against Fordham this weekend to keep the sellout streak alive. And I went on StubHub this morning and I looked at the top brand programs in our league and what season tickets are going for heading into everybody's home opener. Nebraska, cheapest amongst the major brands in our league. You can get season tickets in Lincoln on StubHub right now for $348. Now, Michigan's not too far ahead of that, by the way. But yikes is all you can say watching that. And here's the other thing I'm worried about if I'm Nebraska. The amount of times we had to run Adrian Martinez to get offense.
Yep.
Because they don't have anything behind him.
No.
Okay? I mean, there's nothing behind him.
They had one guy go for like 65 yards. Or no, I think that was actually...
That was a pass.
Yeah.
It was a pass to Marquis Step out of... That was a wheel route, yes. And then he had the 80-yard run or whatever it was that Martinez had. But the amount of hits he took, Illinois pressured, I think, on 1/3 of Nebraska's pass attempts.
I'm sorry, they had like 65 yards of rushing total outside of Adrian Martinez and
yes.
one guy in double digits.
I would be really concerned about him holding up if that's what... Because you saw originally they did not want to run him, and then they got into the game and like, you know what, we have to. We don't have a choice. Let's go now to the Illinois Fighting Illini. And what an opener for Big Brett Bielema. Made a statement, how well prepared they were. This looked like in a more modern alignment. This was, we're coming at you downhill, Brett Bielema at both Arkansas and, of course, Wisconsin. The confidence that Illinois played with, I think they only had 4 assessed penalties on them the entire game. And here's what I really loved. When Brandon Peters got knocked out of the game, we haven't even mentioned that.
Yeah.
Nebraska knocked Illinois' quarterback out of the game like on the 3rd passing play of the game. And in steps Arthur Sitkowski, who has, folks, Arthur Sitkowski quarterbacked the worst statistic as a true freshman, the worst statistical offense in the Big Ten since the Francis P. Northwestern teams of the early 80s. He came into this game with a career touchdown to interception ratio of 8 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. Is that good?
It's pretty bad.
That's bad. That's really, really bad. And on his first pass attempt, It was supposed to be an interception. Illinois called 8 runs in a row. So you saw that clip of Brett Bielema firing Sitkowski up and coaching him up before putting him in the game. And then they showed their confidence in Arthur Sitkowski by calling 8 consecutive run plays, Aaron. 8 in a row. However, after that interception was called back for the 30 yards and penalties, he went, 12 of 16 the rest of the game, couple of touchdowns, threw an insane pass down the sideline for like a 40-some-odd yard gain. What a redemptive performance by Arthur Sitkowski. What a return to the Big Ten by Brett Bielema. And who knows how many games they end up winning this year. But in terms of getting things started off on the right foot, Aaron, they could not have done any better than that.
And in terms of Illinois football coaches, I mean, Brett Bielema is in select company right now. I mean, 2015 was the last time an Illinois head coach won their season opener.
And before that, you went to 1988 and Jeff George.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's some pretty select company. And who did Bill Cubit do this against in 2015? You know who? It was Nebraska.
Was it really? Oh, man.
So I know we're done talking about Nebraska, but I thought that was a little bit of interesting trivia. Yeah, Brett Bielema, if he can keep this up, if this is not just a virtue of playing a team like Nebraska, which it didn't look like that to me. They looked pretty, as you said, confident. That's a good sign in your first game, especially your first conference game. If they can keep that up, and then they just start buying into whatever culture that he builds there. We know he's probably going to be able to recruit pretty well. He's got a good group of guys, a foundation to build upon. You know what? We could be talking about in 2-3 years, Illinois being a factor at least in the Western Division of the Big Ten, and that's a good thing. When you can find these teams. Okay, the same thing applied to Minnesota. When Minnesota is good or when Minnesota is competitive, that's good for the entire conference. If we can talk about Illinois being good or competitive here in a few years, that's also really, really good for the entire conference because, we don't need to get into those details right now, but when you have what were bottom tier teams kind of rising up, that makes the competition better. So from a big picture view, that this is a good start for Illinois. Now they just got to keep this up. We've seen flashes from other Illinois coaches as well. There's no reason, Northwestern, but especially Illinois, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to recruit really, really well in Illinois. But again, this is just the first season. Good start for him. We'll see if they can keep it up and keep an eye on the quarterback situation as well.
So can I give a little tip on the dope rhyme to the Nebraska boosters and Trev Alberts? Do you mind?
Go ahead.
There's a famous college football story back in the 1950s. Northwestern came into South Bend and played mighty Notre Dame and hung a 50 burger on them. Beat them like 55-27. Notre Dame was both simultaneously so disgusted and embarrassed and impressed that after that season, they fired their coach and went and hired the Northwestern coach. The name of that Northwestern coach? Ara Parseghian. Maybe it was actually early 60s. Ara Parseghian is who that coach was. And of course, he went on to become one of the greatest coaches in all of Notre Dame lore. If I'm Nebraska, I turn around after this season and I hire Brett Bielema.
Yep.
He knows how to win in the division. He brings a swagger, but it's a more mature version than Frost. There were no fire drills on the sideline, Illinois taking dumb timeouts, unprepared. He didn't recruit any of those guys, had them all prepped, ready to go. They looked way more competent than they ever have, or at least they have in several years. I go hire him. He brings the physical identity back that is your brand. He knows this part of the country. He knows the Big Ten. He knows the Big Ten West. Again, it's my 2 cents worth. That's what I would do. Let's get to the 2 headline games this weekend. Let's start with what I'm calling the Bounce Back Bowl between Penn State and Wisconsin. Penn State last year became the first team, a rather ignominious distinction, the first team in the history of the AP poll to be ranked in the top 10 and start 0-5. In the 80s, Pittsburgh was ranked in the top 10 one year and started 0-4. but no team had ever been ranked in the preseason top 10 and started 0-5. Penn State did that. Now, everyone makes a big deal of the fact they won their final 4 games, but if you gone back and looked at who those final 4 wins were against, scrubs, okay? The worst Michigan team ever. There really wasn't or at least in modern memory, there really wasn't a marquee win there. Then you look at Wisconsin. Wisconsin was a team that had high hopes last year, had to win the Beef O'Grady's Bowl to get above 500. A lot of COVID issues. Remember, Graham Mertz looked like the next coming of John Unitas, then got COVID and never really recovered after that. They were beaten by Northwestern, absolutely embarrassed by an Iowa team that they have dominated in recent years, as you well know. So, to me, this is a bounce-back bowl for these programs. And if I'm a Penn State fan, we were just talking about Scott Frost saying, it feels like the same movie before. If I'm a Penn State fan, I've really got to be worried if we come out here and lose this game. And knowing what our margin for error is in that division, where's my team's psyche? Because I saw that movie last year, right? So what's your read on this game?
So this is probably an even more intriguing matchup than the other one that we'll be talking about here in a few minutes, because it is, which one of these teams is going to be in the right cultural mindset? I think everything we've seen so far and heard out of Madison seems to indicate that this is a pretty typical Wisconsin team, which is what you want to hear after a season like they had last year. Of course, we talked about last week the quarterback position at Penn State. They look good everywhere but that position. So this is really, really an intriguing matchup, because I'm until I see differently, I've said this before, until I see differently with Wisconsin, I'm not going to really believe or buy into any of the rumors about the cultural collapse or demise of that program. But if there were a team to maybe poke some holes in it in every position but the quarterback, the most important position on the field, it might be Penn State right off the bat. Now, a few weeks down the line, it would be a different conversation, but right off the bat, if you want to see if this is really a typical Wisconsin team in a good way, this is going to be your ticket. As far as Penn State, the Penn State side goes, I think James Franklin, for whatever reason, I've seen him go into these West venues, well, particularly Iowa, and for some reason he's able to get a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, or at least get his guys to have a chip on their shoulder. Now, I don't know really what the makeup of that team is in terms of culture this year. And again, I'd say culture a lot because that's really what we're talking about when we haven't seen any game film on either of these teams yet. This is going to be a coin flip. Now, I'm not totally sure, Steve. There were a couple of freshmen. One was suspended from the team. The other was kicked off the team. The couple of freshman running backs, just yesterday it was announced Wisconsin suspending one, getting rid of the other one. They weren't going to play. They weren't going to factor into this season whatsoever unless they had a rash of injuries. I'm not sure what that's indicative of. Probably not. Probably best not to read too much into that. But
because you can see that both ways.
Yeah.
You can see they've got a discipline problem, or Paul Christ after last year's like, we're just dropping the hammer on people and sending messages. We don't know.
But remember 2 years ago as well, I believe it was one of the wide receivers. I can't remember his name now. There were some off-the-field
Quintus
issues.
Cephas.
Thank you. Last year, and then I think 2 or 3 years ago, there were. I think when they opened with BYU, we found out later there were some rumors about some relationships off the field that were not super great. So this is another season where there's some just head-scratching things that you would not expect from Wisconsin in the weeks leading up to their first game. So that would be a thing to keep an eye on. So I'm not sure you can read too much into that right now, but I'm not betting on this game. And I think right now it's just a coin flip.
Great coordinator battle in this game. Penn State's new offensive coordinator, he had Wisconsin's number at Ohio State, but he also had Ohio State's players. All right. He's also the third different offensive coordinator Penn State has had in the last 3 years. And of course, I mean, everybody loves the defensive coordinator, Wisconsin. He's on a lot of people's future lists as a future head coach. So a great game within the game there in that one. Let's go to what I am calling from the Bounce Back Bowl to the Prove It Bowl. And that's Iowa hosting Indiana. Now, Indiana had its best season since at least 1991, maybe even going back to 1988, 89 in the Anthony Thompson days. This is its highest ranking in the AP preseason poll since 1969. This is the highest it's been ranked in the AP preseason poll since then. Indiana bringing back almost everybody. Now, a few key players that they lost were key contributors last year, but there are plenty of familiar faces. Tawan Mullen, Ty Freifogel, and of course, Michael Penix. But what is his health after the knee injury late last season? Is he 100% back? And then you look at Iowa, which got off to an 0-2 start, but gave the game away against Purdue a year ago. And then really that game against Northwestern, what was that, a 1-point game? And it was anybody's game at the very end. And then they reeled off 6 wins in a row, a lot of them in impressive fashion. But if you look at the teams they beat one team that finished with a winning record, and that was Wisconsin, who had to win their bowl game to get there. And you look at Indiana last year. There's a lot of impressive sounding wins, but Penn State was 4-5. Wisconsin was 4-3. Michigan was 2-4. And so did Indiana just kind of catch a fluke win against Penn State at the start of the year, caught a rare, historically bad Michigan team, or was last year a launching pad? So I think there are still questions about both of these teams, even though they both had very good seasons a year ago, Aaron.
Yep. Like with every single close matchup, it's going to come down, obviously. I'm breaking some really new ground here to quarterback play, and Indiana has the advantage until I see differently. And I am, the more I'm analyzing this game, I am pretty worried. I mean, Iowa, usually defensively, they're off to a good start. They usually get off to a good start. Offensively, not so much. Now, a lot of Iowa fans I'm seeing look at the quarterback stats for the opposing quarterback in their home openers over the last few seasons, 2017, 18, 19, not good, including one matchup against Josh Allen, who is now, probably a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
None of those quarterbacks they played were mobile, or as mobile, I don't think, is Michael Penix, or at least having that dimension, bringing that dimension to the table. The last time they had a home opener, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was back in 2016, I want to say, against Illinois State. That was not a good game. I think Iowa, if they won it all, they won by like 2 points, 2 or 3 points. So I still think this will be a close game. It's going to come down to the end, though. It's going to come down to the end and which quarterback can make the play at the end. And right now, I haven't seen that from Spencer Petras. I've seen a lot of whispers about how he's developed and had a lot of good development over the offseason that he did not get last year. So that's a positive thing. The BTN bus crew said that this is the best skill talent that Iowa has had in a while, and I would agree with that overall. That's probably true as well. Whether or not they can utilize that right out of the gate, I still am dubious because I've seen too many Iowa teams just kind of stumble right out of the gate. Defensively, they will be fine, but will they be fine enough to take on an Indiana team who's running back and quarterback positions, and I mean Freifogel as well. I just think it might be too much for them right out of the gate.
So both of these games are played at 2 of the best home field advantages in our league, right? Yeah. But now add on the fact that the fans in these places have not seen these teams in almost 2 calendar years. The amount of fervor, energy, pent up, built up, to me, I think whatever you think the home field advantage is at Kinnick and Camp Randall, I think you at least got to add a point or 2 for that.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well. I mean, your boy Matt Campbell, this is not Big Ten related, but head coach of the Iowa State Cyclones, he was talking about that this week, about opening up at home in front of a crowd like it normally is. Mm-hmm. These guys went sometimes 6, 7, 8, 9 games last season in front of mostly empty stadiums, if not completely empty.
Especially in our league.
Especially in the Big Ten as well. And as much of a shock that is at the very beginning, you do kind of he talked about this as well, you get used to that environment and you get used to building your own momentum. And so it's going to be a shock again to have these full stadiums for normal Big Ten play, again, conference play. And and just in general. So that is something to watch. I agree. And it's even on the radar of one of the preeminent coaches right now in our neck of the woods.
So finally, the final topic, we're announcing a new feature. This will be debuting Thursdays here on the channel during the football season. Aaron and I go head-to-head confidence picks on every Big Ten game of the week. So this week we've got 10 games. We'll give our winners and then rank them in the order of confidence we think from most to least likely to end up being successful. And we'll go head-to-head and we'll come up with something humiliating the loser has to do at the end of the year. So make sure you
didn't tell me that.
I know. I just thought of it. Is that a...
I guess, as long as you agree to do it as well.
Your predecessor still owes me a chest muff lawn mow for losing this confidence contest several years ago.
So you're used to being let down by your cohort.
Yes. Your predecessor, John Miller, I'm talking about you, you still owe me a chest muff lawn mow for losing that confidence contest several years ago. And don't think I haven't remembered. Okay. But anyway, that's coming up on Thursdays, a mini exclusive episode, confidence picks on every Big Ten game all week long, all season long. Now, of course, that the season is here, you might be thinking, hey, how do I get an edge if I want to get involved in sports wagering? Well, if you want to get an edge over your sports book, you need to download BetQL. It's the only app you're ever going to need to make smart bets because their computer models scan over 350,000 unique bets per year to give you the best recommendation for every game across all major sports, and they give you the reasoning behind why you should place that bet. Their models cover spreads, so sides, over-unders, even player props. And one of the things I love is they give you the data of the sharps, the guys who do this for a living, the pros. Who are they putting their money down on? You always want to know that information, as well as the latest line movements to take advantage of the best lines out there as well. So if you want to head to the App Store or the Google Play Store now, download BetQL. Again, BetQL. You can also head to try.betql.co/10. That's try.betql.co/10 to get started now. And then while you're there, enter the discount code 10 at payment checkout for 25% off. That discount code is 10 at payment checkout to get 25% off. Right now, discount code 10 at try.betql.co/10. Time now for our weekly game of Would You Rather here on Bigger Ten. And Aaron, we begin with you. Would you rather get right back up on that horse, get right back on the field after a big win like that if you're Illinois in a physical game, or get a week off to not worry about a potential turnaround letdown against a fairly decent UTSA team? I mean, this team had a winning record last year. What do you think?
I think, I don't know. This sounds like a cop-out. My reasoning sounds like a cop-out if I'm actually playing the games.
We got your Illini orange on, so go ahead, man. Give me your best Big Bird.
This is salmon, Steve. Salmon. I looked for my Hawkeye gear this morning. There's only so much noise you can make when there's a sleeping 2.5-week-old, and I was just like, I give up.
It is salmon in person on camera, and the lighting, it looks orange.
And I look like a ghost on camera as well.
Yes.
But I would say, what was the temperature in Champaign?
It was in the mid to upper 90s.
Dude, I did my tour of duty in the upper 90s. Okay, give me a week off. Let the temperature cool down just a little bit. For that reason alone, I want a week off. But also, as you mentioned, you know what? That is a big-time win. Those guys are riding pretty high, I would guess. And I would be a little bit fearful of a potential letdown turning around that quickly against Texas San Antonio. So I would want a week off. This next one is for you. For the purposes of evaluating your team, would you rather be Minnesota facing Ohio State or Nebraska facing something called Fordham this week?
If the purpose is evaluating my team, I'd rather be Minnesota. There's just nothing I learn about my team if I'm Scott Frost playing Fordham. Nothing. I'm really playing myself and my own tendencies. So I think this is a perfect opener in many respects for Minnesota. They should be good, but they're not facing like championship expectations. If you're competitive, I think it gives your team a huge boost, and you've got a lot of reasons to think you might be. It's a road game. It'll be at night Fans will be lathered up. This is the first time since I think pre-Woody Hayes that Ohio State's going to start the season with a quarterback that's never thrown a pass in a college game. You have a guy at quarterback who wasn't great last year, but 2 years ago, I think ended up with the 4th highest pass efficiency rating in the history of the Big Ten Conference. Okay, so you've got nothing to lose here if you're Minnesota. I mean, let your balls hang out, let it roll. And I think you can learn a lot about your team and get some confidence if you're competitive. So I'd rather be the Gophers, I think, for sure. For you, Aaron, we ask, would you rather be Michigan State with over 40 new players on the roster or Northwestern, who lost more production from last season than anyone in the conference? And, of course, they open up their season in Evanston Friday night. People forget there were only 2 teams that beat Northwestern last year. Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game in a tightly contested game, and Michigan State. Those are the only 2 teams that beat Northwestern a year ago. So what do you think? Who would you rather be?
This one is really tough. This one's really, really tough. I went back and forth in my head over this, but I think right now I'd rather be, this one's super tough. I'd rather be Michigan State at this point. Just because at least there's a history of knowing how to beat Northwestern there, a recent history, I should say, and Northwestern because of the loss of production that they're dealing with as well. I think you put those 2 things together, and I think this one it's going to be a tight game, but I would rather be Michigan State at this point. There's still too many questions in my mind about the quarterback position in Evanston, so I would rather be Michigan State. Final one is for you. Would you rather bet the over in Minneapolis at 63 points right now, or the under in Evanston at 45?
I would rather bet the over in Minneapolis because I think I'm confident I'm going to get 35 minimum out of Ohio State, right? So if I get 35 minimum out of Ohio State, I'm more than half the way there. And remember, Ohio State had the worst scoring defense in the history of their program last year. On the other game, I would worry about an overtime. Screwing me on the under there. You know what I'm saying? Where
that's true.
It's 20 to 17
or 34.
Yes. And then we get an overtime and I get screwed on that under. I would be worried about that. But to me, give me, if I've got, basically you're asking me this. Would I rather bet on 2 teams I think will have sluggish offenses being sluggish against each other, or would I rather bet on a team that's got pretty much all-world skill position talent to be successful on that side of the ball? I'm gonna bet on the team with the better talent and the better players. Now, these whole conversations about football and football being back, are these not fun to have? Because football is back. It's not just around the corner, folks. Football is absolutely back. And with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL, you can be back as well. With the NFL returning, DraftKings is giving new customers $200 in free bets instantly when you bet $1 or more on any football game. Listen up, you don't want to miss this. Head to the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Place a bet of $1 or more on any Week 1 game in the NFL to receive $200 in free bets instantly. DraftKings didn't forget about current customers. All customers can participate in Draft Week's Week 1 no-brainer. So current customers, you're in as well. For opening night, all customers can double their money as long as Tampa Bay doesn't lose by 74 points. Seems like you can't possibly lose that bet. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code BIGGER10. Promo code BIGGER10. Get $200 in free bets when you place a $1 bet on any football game. That's promo code BIGGER10 to get your free $200 in free bets instantly for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Now, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, wants help, call the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Gambling Disorder Helpline at 800-270-7117. That's for 21 or older, Michigan only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required, 1 per customer. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for full terms and conditions. All right, back here with our Twitter poll results for the week. Will Scott Frost make it the entire season at Nebraska? 54% yes, 46% no. Your thoughts on those results, Aaron?
I voted no. I think if it gets bad enough, and Scott Frost has this propensity to blame shift, or at least not take accountability. That's indicative of maybe some deeper issues there. And when there are deeper issues there, you don't know when that could maybe fly off the handle. So if things get bad enough this season, I think Nebraska could actually be in a situation where it's like it's pretty advantageous for us to get rid of him at this juncture. Maybe that NCAA violations case will conveniently pop up at that time. But if things get bad enough, I think he could be gone before the end of the season.
There's a lot of crazy rumors, and that always happens when a program is falling apart. But if any of those things were true and came out, that could do it. Otherwise, if I'm Trev Alberts, I'm letting Scott Frost ride this thing out to the very end so I can pin the whole thing on him at the end of the season. Wipe the slate completely clean. Let's get to our feedback of the week from Aaron Bush, who says an interesting comparison between Scott Frost and Tim Miles when he was the Nebraska basketball coach. Both underperformed, but I feel like everyone was rooting on Tim Miles because he was a nice guy and a good leader. Scott Frost acts like a child, and he has everyone wanting to rub it in his face just now. I mean, to that end, Tim Miles went right to work for the Big Ten Network, right? Mm-hmm. Could you see Scott Frost going to work for the Big Ten Network if he gets canned?
Oh, heck no.
Yeah, I don't see that match working. So I think maybe, Aaron, there's a little bit something to that. And Tim Miles had Nebraska. Remember, in 2018, Nebraska was a top 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Now, they did not make the NCAA tournament, but in 2018, they were a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, Aaron, or the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the dynamic at play here in our own backyard with Paul Rhodes, the old Iowa State's coach. I mean, he just wasn't cutting it. His teams weren't cutting it, but everybody was rooting for him because he was such a nice guy. I am so proud. That got a little bit old. Maybe not if you're an Iowa State fan, but you root for those types of guys. For guys like Scott Frost, who's more likable right now? Let's put it this way: who's more likable right now amongst the Big Ten landscape of fans? Jim Harbaugh or Scott Frost?
Well, right now,
I don't have to answer that, but
it's Harbaugh's a no-brainer. He's actually like joking with people and talking in the
Yeah.
I mean,
isn't that weird to say?
It is. He's like jovial.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think of it as a Michigan fan, actually. It's completely thrown me for a loop. All right. We'll be back again next week with a full breakdown of all the games. We cannot wait for that here on Bigger 10. In the meantime, don't forget, once again, we want to thank our sponsor, BetQL. It's the only app you're ever going to need to beat your sportsbook. Find their information along with a 25% off discount code in the description of this video, and also check out the special BetMGM offer in the description in order to receive a free year of BetQL and other sportsbook sign-up offers and bonuses. BetQL, the #1 app to compare betting odds. It's a must-get if you want to beat your sportsbook this football season. Finally, follow us on Twitter at Bigger10. Like, rate, subscribe, follow, share, 5-star review, however you watch, whichever is the case. Please keep doing that so we find more Big Ten fans just like you. We'll be back at it again next week. Until then, for Bigger 10, he's Aaron McIntire. I'm Steve Deace. We'll see you then.